Aislinn, first of all, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for visiting us in Washington. That's the first thing to say.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, so thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So the second thing is, I'm paraphrasing you a little here now, but you said about 3 years ago when you wrote a piece for Queen's Film Theatre that cinema is a conversation between a film, the audience, and the filmmaker, and that the responsibility of the filmmaker is to facilitate the conversation. So would you mind elaborating a little bit on more of that for us, and also how that belief informs your own filmmaking?
Well, I think a film, just by the very nature of it, I don't think it's really finished until it's seen by someone, until it's, consumed. And then it takes on, if 200 people see it, it's got 200 different unique identities. And I think they're all as valid as the filmmaker's own version of what it is. So when I say that, what I mean is sometimes people ask me, what does this mean or what does that mean? And I always say, well, what do you think it means? I want to know what your take on it is. And that's broadly what I mean by that. It's that it's not finished until there's all the stages of writing the script, shooting it, casting it, editing it, everything. But it's not actually finished until someone sees it with fresh eyes.
And when you say fresh eyes, you were writing that piece in the context of being an usher in a theatre in Queens. So does that mean that you can see a film a couple of times with different eyes? I mean, how does that play out?
Well, I was writing that piece that was for the QFT's anniversary, and I was an usher there for several years back when I was a student, which, being a film student, that was a really good way. I didn't have any money, so this way I got paid to watch films instead of having to pay somebody to see the films, so it was an ideal situation. And I think, yeah, you do see a film, I think we all experience this. If you see a film more than once, very often you have a slightly different take on it, or you see things that you didn't see the last time. And I think every time you watch a film, it's a new thing to you, especially, a really good film.
And I should have mentioned earlier in my introduction of Aislinn that she has 2 master's degrees, one in filmmaking and one in screenwriting. And heavily influenced, I believe, Aislinn, by Godard, by the French filmmaker Godard. So you also quoted him as saying, like, the filmmaker who wants to put something on screen needs to know how people will react at the screen. So when you were making and when you were writing Doineann, what are reactions you are looking from the audience?
Well, I think what I meant by including that quote was that you're always attempting, and I think it's probably the same with every type of art. I think it's like the point of it is you're trying to communicate something, some sort of truthful thing about your experience of the world as a human being. That's what you're trying to do. And some things can't be just communicated with words, and that's what we use art for, to communicate a feeling, an emotion, a sense of a time and place, maybe. And that's what I'm referring to when I use that quote. And with Doineann, there was a couple of things I was interested in, and the other people involved would have their own versions of what they were interested in too. But I think me and Breege were united. Breege, who plays Leisha, were united in that we wanted to have a female detective type character who was not like anyone we'd seen before, and who doesn't have a masculine approach to solving crimes. And in fact, Tomas's weakness is that he doesn't respect her. He doesn't think that she's not signaling all the stuff that he understands about masculinity and power. So therefore he thinks she doesn't have any power and she doesn't know what's going on, but he's completely wrong, because of course she does, And that was one of the major things. I think everybody who's Irish, and I think it's the same for many Irish Americans too, the mammy, the granny, these are the people that's the first person you ring. Something goes wrong, you phone mammy, you phone your granny. Older Irish women really hold up so much of the society, and I don't think are properly respected for that, or that's not acknowledged a lot of the time. And that's what I wanted to do with the character of Leisha.
Thank you, Aislinn. Question.
Right, well, first of all, I should say that I didn't direct Doineann. I wrote it. I am a director, and it's the only film I've written for another director. It was directed by Damien McCann, who couldn't be with us today. But I can talk to that a bit because I know sort of how it works, and I know from my conversations with Damien. For the locations, we were supremely fortunate because we had to shoot within Northern Ireland, which you'll know is a really small part of an already small country. So you're not coming down with options necessarily, but because of the way the finance was working, we had to shoot in Northern Ireland. But also, it's a very beautiful small part of a very small, beautiful country. So I think it was really Damien was only out doing location scouting for a couple of days, and he sent me some images, and I was like spooked because that house was exactly what I saw in my head. Everything that he sent me, I was like, this is so bizarre. That's exactly how I see it. And it was all shot around Strangford Lough. So again, we had to shoot in Northern Ireland, but also you want to, especially with this is a low budget film, you want to be within a certain catchment area of the city so that the crew don't have to be put up in hotels and all that because the budget's not going to stretch to it. So a lot of the decisions are actually made by those sorts of practicalities, but it just so happens that Strangford Lough is within a reasonable distance of Belfast. That's where most of the crew live, and it all worked out extremely fortunately in that respect. The shoot actually shut down twice because of COVID. It was the first time it was shut down. It was just a couple of weeks after lockdown was announced. So when they were scheduled to shoot after quite a long time of trying to get it together. And then it got shut down again later in the year because someone tested positive. Luckily, nobody had never spread or anything like that, and they were actually got off with that pretty easily. But I think there was an awful lot of luck because they had no money, very little time. I think in the end they had something wild like 18 shoot days or something like that altogether. And in terms of light and so on, there were some things that were done slightly differently, maybe would have been thought of as a different time of day, but you're working on what you got. And Damien has a really excellent eye. Everybody who's working on this are properly trained, really, really good crew, and Fortune smiled upon the Fortune and a lot of talent, and that's how it went.
Fantastic. Over here.
I think it was quite early on in the development process, and I just had a notion that I felt like I wanted to do it like that. And I said to Damien, I think when we get to the midpoint, we should just like flip it totally and have this guy who we're kind of on side with until then, and then just take the mask off. It just felt like a refreshing way to approach that sort of story to me. And Damien was up for that. He liked the sound of it. So that's the way we went. Thank you very much. If I could get any of the people to back it, I've been saying this, I'll make a TV series. Absolutely, I'd be up for it. I think Bridget's phenomenal. I think she did such an incredible job with that character, and I think it absolutely could have legs beyond this. I think there's always inevitably, I suppose, some little bit of you in any character that you write because your only experience of the world is yourself. Just that's how it is. Your only direct experience of how human beings behave, and then you're inventing behavior. So to some extent, there's always a little bit of you in it, but I don't really think about it like that when I'm writing. I'm inventing totally. And certainly, I don't think there's any of me in like Tomas. There's probably maybe some slivers of me, or certainly, my older female relatives in Bridget's character, and other people that I know in Siobhan as well. But I think I think the actors really bring that character to life, because even when you're writing someone and you're picturing them a certain way, it's always a surprise to see how the actor interprets it. How you might have had a different inflection in your head when you wrote a line, but then the actor brings a completely new spin to it by saying it in a different way, and that's how they just kind of fully inhabit and make that character a three-dimensional person, which I think they were all extraordinarily good at. Again, Northern Ireland's a small place, Ireland's a small place, and there are not that many actors who can speak Irish as well. There are some, but there are not a huge amount. So to get this kind of level of cast under those circumstances is extraordinary. And I don't know if I've even answered your question. I think it's a combination of those three things, but I think it's mostly the actor. The actor is the custodian of who the character ultimately becomes, and I think that's the credit for that has to go to them.
Aisling, you mentioned about Irish, etc., and I know you were brought up in kind of what you call the borderland, which is kind of the hinterland, both sides of the border, north and south in the Republic and north of Ireland. And there's been, a long and difficult, if you like, story about Irish, particularly in Northern Ireland. So why, in the middle of a pandemic, for a first-time director and a script in Irish, like some courageous choices, I would say, and was it important for you to write this in Irish?
Well, I mean, I was brought up with the Irish language, and it was very important to my father in particular that we would know how to speak Irish. The circumstances under which I met Doineann. So Doineann was already an established documentary filmmaker. He was like working regularly in TV, in Irish language TV, making documentaries for the most part. And he had made some narrative fiction shorts, and he was feeling like he wanted to make a feature film. We have a friend in common who was the DP on my film, The Devil's Doorway. And he introduced me to Doineann. He said to Doineann, I know this girl, she's got some Irish too. And we met up, and so it was always going to be an Irish language film, I was interested in doing that, and that's what he wanted because that's his, Doineann is like speaks Irish all the time as a priority. So that came before there was even a story. It was going to be an Irish language film first and foremost.
And I believe the story, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the story itself kind of came out of a conversation in a cafe, maybe a pub cafe in Belfast. Like, is that true? And what was the conversation, and how did the conversation evolve from a conversation into a screenplay?
Well, we met up. Ryan gave us each other's numbers. We met up and had a coffee and talked about what kind of films we both like, and we hit it off really well. We got along really well, and we liked a lot of the same stuff. We like darker films and thrillers and so on. And then at that point there was no story or anything, so we were just kind of like shooting the breeze, and we started talking about islands. We were both really interested in island life, and Doineann told me an anecdote about Tory Island, which some of you may have been to, where apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is what he told me, that a man who was from Dublin and was fairly well off, had built a house on Tory Island and as a holiday home. And the people on Tory Island didn't love this guy. And I think there was something involving car insurance where there's a bit of a, you maybe don't have insurance. And everybody knows, we all live on the island. And he had gotten someone in trouble over this, something like that. So they had it in for this guy. And one time he went over to Dublin and came back, and his house was gone. I mean, it was gone. It wasn't burnt down, it was gone. And when he went to talk to, he was like, oh, what the, like, where's my house gone? They were like, there was no house there. I don't know what you're talking. There was no house there. And it doesn't really have much to do with this in the end, but that's sort of where it started. I was fascinated by that story and by the idea of like island justice, being its own thing, not quite being the mainland rules, and that's where this spawned from.
And building on the gentleman's question earlier, so up to now, like you've been essentially, directing your own work. What was it like handing over, a major script to someone else, and how much involvement did you have, and did you stay awake? Did you, how did you deal with that?
Well, I think you have to, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to do if you are a writer-director and you're used to directing your own work. To hand it off to another director, but I really trusted Doineann. I knew he was going to do a really good job, and I knew that I had to let him do his thing, that I couldn't be looking over his shoulder and, he wouldn't appreciate it, and I don't think it would really help anyway. So I just When I finished the script, I gave it to him. He kept me informed about stuff like the locations and the casting and all that. And I was like, "You're doing it brilliant. This is all amazing." But I didn't hover over him or anything. I didn't go to the set either. I just let him do his thing.
Was there an agreement between that you could fight stuff out, or was it his? It was his area, and you were just going to totally stay out of it.
Well, we were closely involved in the whole development process, and as I say, we're lucky in that we got along really well. So there wasn't really any fisticuffs or anything like that, But we had development meetings where we would talk about story and all of that. And but he let me do my job, and I let him do his job, and it worked like that pretty much.
Okay, oh, is there a questioner up there?
There's a question here
Oh,
at the
sorry,
front.
yes.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I didn't. I let Damien do his thing. I didn't even see it. I actually did see it on my laptop when it was done. They sent me a version of it, and I was trying to wait until the big screen, but I couldn't help myself. But then when I did see it with proper sound system and everything, I was just yeah, really impressed by the quality of the sound design, and I think the score is brilliant too. I'm not too surprised because I know Damien is brilliant at what he does, and I knew that he would do great stuff. And but no, I let him do his thing. I felt that it was my duty to just give him the space to do his thing.
Actually, just can you speak about filmmaking in Ireland generally, but in Northern Ireland specifically? We have a sense, there's a lot happening. I was telling the audience at the start that Coonan has just won a big award at the Berlin Hour. Still getting nominated. Like, what's your explanation? What's happening? What does it feel like now to be a filmmaker in Ireland and in Northern Ireland?
I think it kind of feels like we're on the cusp of stuff. It feels like there are things happening and there are going to be things. It's snowballing a little bit. You have to remember that Ireland is historically, as you're aware, not a rich country going back. It hasn't had a long time to develop a filmmaking infrastructure, but over the past couple of decades, a phenomenal amount of work has been done getting it up to. We now have world class filmmaking infrastructure in Ireland, north and south, and like within straight away, people in Ireland making films were making an impact on the international stage and getting nominations for big things and making waves. And that's first of all in English language filmmaking, but now increasingly in Irish language filmmaking. There's more of it's less of something that was made for Irish speaking people at home and more something that's being made for everybody, for the world. I think there's going to be a big impact in years to come. I think when you're writing a detective piece, there's always going to be comparisons, and there's always going to be stuff that either consciously or subconsciously is in there. For my part, I was. I mean, there have been other female detectives, but I haven't seen one like this, where she's very much using that kind of Irish mammy sort of approach to getting stuff done. So things like, there's no Irish man who could, if you're an older woman and you say, "I'm sorry, I just need to use the toilet," there's no Irish man who's going to say, "No, you're not coming in." It doesn't matter what he's doing, like, and coming around with the soup and all that. She knows how to use her subtle power to win at this game, and that's what I specifically mean. So I can see the comparison. That is a wee bit Columboish, I guess. I'd never thought of it like that before. I think that's probably a subconscious thing. Well, thank you very much. I've written another Irish language film actually, which is going to be produced by the same company, and I'm going to direct this one. So it'll be the first time that I've made a film in Irish. It's a horror film, um, and we're kind of ready to go on that. So we're sort of at the casting stage, and that might be shooting later on this year. I have a few other things that are kind of in the pot. I've written, I have a whole crime drama TV series, a six-parter that's in the kind of latter stages of development. It's not, unfortunately, Leisha's not in it, and it's English language, but it's within that broad kind of genre of what some people have called Celtic noir, which I like as a phrase. And so that's going to be coming up as well at some point. Thank you very much. I think honestly, and actually it's quite a few years now since I wrote this, because it took them a while to get all the finance together, and then it got shut down twice in COVID and all that. So I think I actually wrote it about 4 years ago. And honestly, I think it was that first meeting with Doineann and that story about the man and the island, coming from Dublin, this like arrogant guy coming from Dublin and building a house here and treating these people, not respecting their island way. I think that was the root of it. And then it came out of that kind of, I was interested in issues around coercive control and like gaslighting and stuff like that as well. And I just kind of, I guess fundamentally the film is kind of like, Doineann broadly means storm, like a very bad storm. And it's like the film is kind of a clash between this hyper masculinity, which in Tomas is not a good thing, and versus Leisha's more kind of feminine way of handling things. I think that's sort of how it took shape for me, if that makes sense. That's a really good thing to bring up, actually, because sometimes I forget that. It's really astounding because you would never know. You would never know. So Breach had kind of school Irish. That was it. You know, she'd like in Ireland, in the Republic, you know, yeah, you have to learn some Irish when you're at school, but you hadn't touched it in decades. And it just so happened that the folks at Double Band knew her. They had worked with her previously in some documentary form, and it was them, the producers. It was either Dermot Lavery, I think it was Dermot Lavery, that said to Damien, what about Breach Brennan? Let's give her a call. She'd be brilliant for this. She read the script and read the script in English, and then she was like, I want to play this part. So she spoke to Damien and she said, I don't really have Irish, but I'm going to do it, you know. And he knew that if you just know from the energy of Breach, if you meet her, if she was going to say that, that meant she was going to do it. So she did a course in Irish online in the run up to it, and then which helped a lot. But Damien worked very closely with Breach on the pronunciation of every line and making sure that she was getting it just right. And I think then it's a testament to Breach's talent that it's not just the pronunciation, but it's the inflection on the words. Is, you know, she's performing. She's not just saying these words, she's performing them. So a lot of people on the crew, the other cast members, all fluent Irish speakers, and everybody was just blown away by how she took to it. It was astounding.
Aisling, just, you know, we had you over for the Devil's Doorway. We've had you for Doineann. We'll be delighted to have you for the next one in Irish. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. You have a great, warm, engaging presence about you, Aisling. Not at all very directorial at all, you know, something. And congratulations on your film, and the best of luck and good fortune to you going
forward. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Cheers, Paddy. Thank you.